Hello and welcome to this session at the World Economic Forum on India's economic blueprint. It is a matter of conversation in the corridors of WEF that India is the next big economic star. To what extent are we on the path of being able to realize our economic potential, and what are the pitfalls that can hold the India story back? To talk about India's current and emerging economic blueprint, I want to introduce our speakers for this conversation, starting with Minister Ashwini Vaishnav, one of the bright stars in the Modi government, Minister for Information Technology, Information and Broadcasting. So thank you very much, sir, for joining us. We have Shobna Khamenini from Apollo, and I have Sanjeev Bajaj from Bajaj Finserv. And our last speaker joining us like a true Sultan, Sultan Ahmed. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us, chairperson of DP World, making a dramatic entry here at our conversation. So thank you very much and welcome. I want to start by asking Minister Vaishnav about what makes you confident that India will be able this time round to achieve its true economic potential, given the number of false starts the world has seen India make in the past. Why do you think we're on path to becoming a developed country, like the Prime Minister says, by 2047?
Thank you, Rahul. I would like to say that India has a very well thought through economic strategy at this point of time for the last many years now. The strategy is based on 4 pillars. Pillar number 1 is public investment in social, physical, and digital infrastructure. Pillar number 2 is a lot of focus on technology, manufacturing, and innovation. Pillar number 3 is inclusive growth. We have a very diverse society, inclusive growth. Pillar number 4 is simplification. I'll take a couple of minutes, Rahul, if you permit, to explain these 4 pillars. When we look at public investment, in the budget of 21, we started with about 40 billion US dollars. Then we ramped it up to 60, 80, 100, and this year's budget, the current financial year that we are running, is 125 billion US dollars. This is going into physical, digital, and social infrastructure. Physical as in the highways, the railways, the transmission lines, the ports, the airports. You must have seen the numbers. Last year we constructed 5,300 kilometers of new railway lines. To give you a context, the network of Switzerland is 5,000 kilometers. In 10 years, we have electrified 45,000 kilometers of railway lines. Again, to give you a context, the network of Germany is about 35,000 kilometers. So that's the pace at which we are. We have doubled the number of airports. We have doubled the capacity of our ports. In case of digital infrastructure, if you look at the way 5G was rolled out, 450,000 towers are today radiating 5G signals in the country. About 6.5 million kilometers of optical fiber cable has been taken to the last point, last village in the country. So a lot of emphasis on digital infrastructure, and we created a complete digital architecture where people can solve population scale problems using the artifacts which are available, which have been funded by the government. Social infrastructure, number of universities opened in the last 10 years, 370. It's practically every week one new university is being opened, right? So huge focus on building new hospitals, building new schools, building new universities. So the first pillar, public investment in digital, social, and physical infrastructure. The second pillar is huge emphasis on manufacturing, technology, and innovation. We all know 10 years ago we had hardly a handful of startups. Today we have 130,000 startups and 120 plus unicorns in our country. We have seen how much focus on manufacturing has given us the good results. 10 years ago, electronics manufacturing was practically nil. Today, $120 billion worth electronics manufacturing, and you take that to any sector, whether it is defense manufacturing, it is specialty chemicals manufacturing, practically every field manufacturing is growing at a very good pace. The focus on innovation, focus on technology, that's the second pillar. The third pillar is inclusive growth. We have a very diverse society in our country. We have 18 official languages having different scripts, and people at very different stages of economic growth in their lives. In the last 10 years, if I give you this number, 510 million bank accounts have been opened where people who had never had any access to banking, they have become part of the formal financial sector. 510 million means the whole population of Europe plus Japan combined. 130 million households have got tap water connection. Imagine the change it brings in the lives of the people living in those households. 110 million people getting cooking gas connections, which was earlier thought to be a privilege of the rich, is now available to the people at the bottom of the pyramid. So as the people at the bottom of the pyramid, they come up the ladder in the economic life, it makes a very big difference. And that is one of the reasons why Prime Minister Modi ji got re-elected third time when there are so many democracies which have lost. The fourth pillar is simplification. 1,500 laws have been removed from the statute book. And many of the sectors like the telecom sector was run by a law which was of 1885 vintage. Removed from the statute book, brand new 2023 law. So these four pillars, Rahul, give us a good confidence that we'll have 6 to 8% consistent growth over many years, and inflation will remain moderate within the 4 to 6% target band. So that means we can look at a nominal growth of 10 to 14% in the coming many years, and I can say that with 95% confidence interval, Rahul.
Sultan Ahmad bin Suleiman, if one were to listen to ministers in the Indian government, it would seem that India is undisputedly going to achieve its economic potential and the world will be a G3, the US, China and India. Looked at from your lens in the UAE, when you look at the India story, what, sir, do you think are the things you think seem to be falling into place nicely, and what is it that concerns you?
Thank you very much, first of all, Your Excellency, and ladies and gentlemen. I am very honored to participate with you. What we invested in India is a reflection of how important India. For me, today, one of the most important markets is India, the growth. I mean, when you look at China and India, they have the same population. China trades 100 million containers, India trades maybe 15. So the chance for growth is bigger for India, and India is close to the market. Today, they predicted that India will become the third largest economy, passing Germany. So in our business, we're looking at how to connect India to India to make sure the manufacturers are able to sell their product and take it on time. And what His Excellency mentioned is the speed on the roads that they have been building, on the rails. We never seen this in India. And the Prime Minister Modi's initiative, Made in India, to the world is really working. And many people have slogans, but India delivers. Our aim, how to connect India to Africa, how to connect India to Europe. You know, there is an initiative between UAE, United States, and India to connect cargo from UAE into Europe. The CEPA agreement we had with India, one of the fastest, actually, agreement done with India, and we really thank India for that. And today, that have tripled the trade between India and UAE. Now, DP World, we are very well connected in Africa. And so Africa is a place, sir, where everything you want to sell, you can sell. 1.4 billion people, they will be in the next maybe 10 years. By 35, there'll be 2.5 billion. 800 million in countries that have no seaports. We are today the largest logistic company. We are in almost 48 African countries with last mile services. We deliver, we have cars, we distribute products. So we can increase the business. One of the companies, I will mention the name, is an Indian company manufacturing something in Nigeria. And we spoke to them, and they had a problem logistically. In the first month, their revenue and profit both increased by more than 40%. Because we took the product from where they bring it and used our network. In Nigeria alone, we have 250,000 point of sales. Imagine. Whole Africa, we have another probably 250 again. So our knowledge overseas, internationally, we are mobilizing it to connect with India. And we are really pleased. Every time we attend vibrant Gujarat or any initiative, you see ministers who are not telling you what they're going to do. They're telling you what they've done, what they achieved. And I'm very impressed with Your Excellency. Every time I meet with him, he's one of the only people I see in my life where you ask a question about something and he will give you an answer now. Go ahead, do it. In other places, they'll tell you, let me study, and when you call them again, they forget about it. But everybody is driven. There is passion in India.
Thank you.
And we are very proud of that.
Sanjeev Bajaj, the government vision was laid out by the minister, but how bullish is India Inc. About being able to achieve India's true economic potential? When the Prime Minister speaks of turning India into a developed country by 2047, do you think of that as a political slogan, or do you believe it to be economically achievable? And are we on that path in your view?
No, so every country needs to have an aspiration. And I think we have to set large but realistic aspirations for ourselves, and I believe this is one. But let me talk about what I think is working and some of the things that I think are not working. What's working is that we have a government that's not only supportive of economic growth, but is a driver of it. Look at the change in physical and digital infrastructure last 10, 12 years. Look at policies, the PLI policy. Business asked for it. Government delivered on that, and many others. So that's one big positive. Second, look at the growth and the confidence of the private sector. Whether you're a large business group, whether you're a startup, India is today a world leader in so many different sectors. Even look at startups. Today, we are world leaders in a bunch of not only digital services, but like in drone manufacturing. We have startups that are producing drones not only, as you know, for the Indian defense, but for some of our friendly countries around the world as well. So that's again working, private sector with the government. What can be better? One, see, we are growing at 6.5%. Can't take it for granted, but I think a 6.5% growth for India, unless things go terribly wrong overseas, and they could in the West, but is reasonably expected. But that's not enough for us to manage 1.5 billion people's aspirations. We have to grow at 7.5%, 8%. This delta of 150 basis points is not in our DNA. So we have to build additional tailwinds, drivers for this 150 basis points. And this will come, see, some simple ideas over there. Our PLI schemes, electronics, auto, and a bunch of industries working well. But simple things, why can't we connect our free trade agreements, align them with the sectors where the PLI schemes are there, and our custom duty structure? Bring these together, it will significantly improve the ease of doing business because they all get aligned. Today, if we look at the brilliant way in which the GST Council works in India, center and states, and there are differing priorities at times, but they sit together, they decide. Sometimes we have a state minister over here, so sometimes if things don't work, things get postponed, but then eventually they implement. Why can't we have GST-like councils for land, labor, electricity, water, some of the basic things that manufacturing companies need when they're expanding or investing? If we do this between center and states, I think it makes a big difference. Lastly, we went through 1 or 2 quarters of slowdown, and sometimes from some quarters we get into a blame game. Arey, private sector is not putting in money. Arey, we've given tax breaks. What is happening? Let's keep in mind, government has done a great job. So, and I'm not just saying it because the minister is here and we are on TV. But what is also real in the last 4 years is the wars, COVID, and coming out of that, this is our 4th or 5th year as the fastest growing large economy in the world. We should be thrilled with that. But yes, we have to get to 8%. We have to work together to find out if things are slowing down, how do we get domestic growth up, how do we align on exports, and then you will see the private capex come in. Because private capex, unlike government capex, we have to pay back. So we have to keep that in mind.
Since you mentioned the issue of slowdown, let me ask Minister Vaishnav about whether you think that the slowdown that we've seen in the second quarter of this fiscal is temporary and highly short-term, caused because we had elections in India and government capital expenditure wasn't quite what it was in the previous years. Or there is a view among some economists who think of this as being more structural and more long-term, signaling concerns about India's growth prospects going forward.
See, there are 3 big levers in the economy: the fiscal policy, the monetary policy, and the credit policy. The RBI has had a very kind of restrictive stance for quite some time, and liquidity has been controlled because RBI wanted to put a big brake on the inflationary pressures. That is one factor. And of course, because of the elections and because of a very uncertain and very prolonged monsoon, construction work in many sectors, not just the government sector, but also in the private sector, had a little bit of impact. But I think this is a very small blip in this entire curve. We definitely are in that 6 to 8% growth band, which we will see in the coming year itself. It will come back.
Shubhna Kamini, when you hear from the government, when you hear investors here at Davos, what according to you is it that gives you confidence that India will be able to unlock its true economic potential? And what do you fear could hold India back?
So I attended a CEO conference, the top CEOs of the US a couple of months ago. And I was astonished to hear that almost 20% of their workforce is in India. That's GCCs. My God, there are 2,000 of them without us knowing. They employ 1.2 million people now, and it's continuing to grow. So they're seeing some value. So I think that globally, when, again, people were interviewed, and it's not me as an Indian, but it's others speaking, and they said the same thing. Every time you say the India story, what gives you the confidence that the India story has come? And I think a couple of things why I think it's come is that we're in a really tough situation around the world, that there's so much uncertainty. So just think, since David Beckham got the Crystal Award, so you're in a playoff. There's no other leader that can bend it like Beckham, like Modi ji with this. So I think that, we're betting really on the fact that we have a great player who's leading this team. And that's serious. It's been there for 15 years. And I love the fact that the government is thinking like an owner, that they don't think about quarter by quarter, except when you're trying to push private sector. But, in this thing, but you're thinking long term, what can India be? And I think this what can India be is what excites everybody. So one factor, let me give you just a couple. So one, as a personal owner, I'm second generation business. My dad started this, and I've seen in the last 30 years that I've been working, and I have been working 30 years hard, and we've seen 20% compounding growth, CAGR of 20%. And the nice thing is that I know that when my kids take over, they're looking at a country and an economy that will be the same growth. Now tell me where you'll find that. And you meet business after business, and they'll see that optimism. And the thing is, they're finding different ways to do it. And that's the excitement, that it's not just the old way. Now we've turned, we turned our business around to say that, we can't just give physical healthcare, we have to be digital. Now we move AI. And when you think exponentially, and that's what this government has been able to give us, or India has been able to give us, that we can dream to be, it's the cheapest cost of technology, to get IT services, of data. It's the cheapest in the world. Everybody has a mobile phone. So now they can think about creating, and most of us are born entrepreneurs. So all these people are thinking, what can we do to make this happen? And that's what I like about the India story. Another India story is that everything is not just concentrated in the metros. It's not concentrated in Delhi. It's about the states. It's about the hundreds of cities that are coming up now, which is exciting, that people are moving towards and thinking, I can become a billionaire even if I don't sit in the 4 metros. So this is the excitement. The compounding factor of India is something that no one else in the world can match, and that too with the stability.
Yeah. Minister Vaishnav, there are two global meta trends playing out simultaneously. One, you've got American President Donald Trump coercing companies to come and invest in America and make America great again. And you've got the potential opportunity for India to plug into China +1 global supply chains. We've missed that bus a couple of times in the past when that window of opportunity was created. Given the pressures on American companies, global companies to set up manufacturing in the United States, what makes you think that a lot of these global companies which are looking at India, assessing whether it can be a source of manufacturing as they expand outside China, that India is where they're likely to come? They've been to Vietnam, they've been to Indonesia, they've been to Mexico, other countries. Why do you think this time they may choose India?
So Rahul, we must see this from a different frame. The frame that I would like to present before you is the frame of trust, the frame of talent, and the frame of design capabilities. That's very uniquely Indian advantage that we have here. Without taking any names, where would you find a country where there's so much design talent available? There is such an abundance of talent, as Shobna ji said, almost 2,000 GCCs working on most of very advanced chips, very advanced design solutions that are being done for the so many global companies. So that kind of talent is available, and the biggest factor is the way our Prime Minister has conducted his economic and foreign policy over the last 10 years. The world today trusts India. We respect IPR. We respect the knowledge created by other countries. So that trust is a very big defining factor, and that's why we are seeing so much interest in people shifting their supply chains, not just supply chains, but shifting their value chains to India. I would say that look at from that frame. So if we look at that frame, then we'll see that today people want to manufacture semiconductors in India. They see India as definitely one of the top 3 destinations for semiconductors in the coming years, right? And the base is already set. They see India should become the use case capital for AI, right? Today, models are practically becoming commoditized. So how do we create that entire ecosystem where we should be able to create use cases and applications and agents for the entire world's industry? So that's the framework I would like to see. The framework of trust, the framework of design, and the framework of availability of talent.
Sultan Ahmed bin Suleiman, when you spoke first, you spoke about what excited you about what you were seeing in India and why DP World was so bullish on India's prospects. What more do you think you'd like to see from Minister Vaishnav and from the Indian government, which you think from the lens of an international investor could help India truly unlock its economic potential?
I'm very pleased and happy with the support of the government. And I tell you, as a good example is the Excellency the Minister. In one day I meet him and a lot of things are resolved. This is the policy in India. But I'll touch on something else about multinationals. Today is a window of opportunity because many manufacturers want to move out to the Far East, mainly China, because in the pandemic, the whole supply chain shut down. And China just opened a year and a half. China is facing tremendous difficulties in exporting what they haven't produced. That's why a multinational like Apple moved to India and they produce in India. Now, one of the multinationals, without naming them, is we are shipping for them 10 to 12 billion from India, which they manufacture in there. There'll be many more coming. And when you talk about Trump, I know it's a very interesting subject. People talk about him basically trying to tax and try to raise the duties. What Trump wants is fair trade. He doesn't want free trade. Fair trade, from Trump's point, American market is open. You want to work with me, open your markets. And we don't want to name which countries, but many countries are like that. And he's very happy with India and how the progress in India. I believe with the nearshoring, which means a lot of people don't want to manufacture far, they want to manufacture in the consumer market. There's no other place better than India. I only have one issue with Indian manufacturers and traders. A lot of them are so busy enjoying a big market, so export, not many people are interested. Let me tell you, I met many of them. They do amazing job, but they have a big market locally. However, I see a change. One of the companies called TVS Motorcycle, they're one of the largest in the world. He actually went to manufacture outside and he went to export to Africa. Now in Africa, we are in over 48 countries. And we're working with him as we speak now in giving him facilities in Africa. But many will move. They have no choice to avoid taxes or whatever. They will have to come in my opinion, too.
So, Minister Vaishnav, respond to this, because as I was speaking to Dr. Geeta Gopinath at the International Monetary Fund, one of the things she said was that if India truly wants to achieve its economic potential, this government needs to reduce trade tariffs to actually plug into global supply chains, that you can't have a policy of trade protectionism playing out at the same time when you're hoping to enhance manufacturing, because as Sultan Suleiman said, you have to aim big. You have a big market in India, but just trying to address that local market isn't big enough. China aimed big, and India needs to reduce tariffs to be able to do the same.
Simplification of tariffs is one of the major agendas of our government, and a lot of simplification has happened in the past, you have seen. A lot of digitalization has also happened in the past, and that has really helped the global supply chain. I'll give an example where the mindset is changing. In the case of electronics manufacturing, let's say, we have a domestic demand which is today almost like saturated, because 99.1% of the mobile phones that we use in our country are today manufactured in India. Now, from here, the growth strategy has to totally change. So this is the change in mindset now. Earlier, we were looking at import substitution, manufacturing for the domestic demand, and now we are looking at make in India, make for the world, look at export-led growth as the next phase of growth. And that is happening in many industries, pharmaceutical industry, for instance,
yes,
in chemical industry, for instance, in garment industry, it has been there for quite some time. So that change in mindset is happening, and simplification in the customs laws, simplification in the customs structure, that also is happening. Yes, there will be some duties to protect certain segments, which is important for us. And that kind of calibrated approach is a better approach, I would say. I frankly don't agree with the very theoretical approach of many economists. I would rather take a calibrated approach, which is more practical and more commonsensical.
Sanjeev Bajaj, you spoke of the need to find some way of ensuring that we can grow the economy by 1.5% more than it is growing at this moment. And a lot of economists say that what worked for China in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s might not work for India in the same way, because this is a different world. You know, the tailwinds aren't pro-globalization, they are headwinds that you face, and therefore relying more on services exports rather than just traditional manufacturing would rather be the right way to go. So how do you see this in terms of reimagining what it takes to be able to grow at 8%?
You know, Rahul, we are at a very interesting point of time in the economy at close to $2,800 per capita. We are actually a country where over 60 million Indians have the same per capita as Europe, $50,000, $60,000. 400 million have the same per capita as Indonesia, about $8,000 to $10,000. And then there are a bunch of them that are naturally poorer. So you have India firing various engines. And hence, in the same way, whether domestic investment or domestic growth or exports, both have to fire. And fortunately, we are seeing that. So in the last 5 years, if you see, our exports growth has grown from about 535 billion to close to 800 billion this year. The domestic market, so when you're growing at 6-7%, you're doubling the market every 10, 11 years. And we are seeing the benefit of that. But we have to continue doing this. Coming to a specific point, both manufacturing and services is required. We have a very significant advantage in AI. And while it's still early days of AI, some of the experimentation we've done in our own companies shows that growth could be, or productivity could be enhanced 20-25% over there. And people get worried, is AI going to take away jobs? The more boring, repetitive jobs will go away. But AI will significantly support the human in the next level of jobs. And you know, our demographic dividend, young country, speaking English, many of them having a STEP background, really can get job ready. And that's why we have to focus on the right skills to use AI as we learn, as AI also evolves in the coming years. But we can't wait 5 years. We have to focus on that now. Because if we get them ready, they are a huge talent. As we talked about the GCC businesses in India, we can explode on services, both for domestic and for exports, using this. And this is one example. There are many others such.
Shubhna Kaminini, because we've got two sets of Indias, one at the very creamy layer, the super bright, sharp, highly educated, technologically savvy youngsters who run many of Silicon Valley's top companies, are playing an important role in India and the United States and elsewhere in the global economy, and that you've got a big bulge of people emerging out of different educational institutions who don't have the same skill set required to be able to thrive in an AI world. Sanjeev Bajaj says you have to do it now. Are we doing enough to be able to ensure that that young generation has the skills required to plug India into the global economy? Or do you think that that could become a big bunch of people who are discontented because the world is changing? You are people at the top who are growing and they feel that they're being left behind.
The truth is, I think obviously we're not doing enough. And if you look at it, by 2030, India will have 1 billion employable people. That's 1 billion people who can be employed for the workforce. And it's everybody's problem. So, while I think that the ability, and I want to leave you with another fact. I just heard from this thing, Mark Benioff. He said, this will be the last age, we'll be the last CEOs in history to have just had employees who are human. So it's going to change, that not only will there be 1 billion employable Indians, but there will be another maybe 10 billion agents who are employable also into this workforce. So now that's what we have to see, what will move the needle. And I think that whatever that we need to do in India to create that social satisfaction is a big one in which will all consumers. Nobody has immediate answers, but I think what's important is that the government recognizes that this is a figure and this is the time. I agree with Sanjeev that this is the time. It's already late. We need to be able to bring those changes. And the hope is that we have the opportunity to be engaged in global supply chains. And just like we did with phones, just like we're going to do with auto, just like we're doing with defense. So there are other things in manufacturing, but more than that, like you say, in kind of services, India for a graying world, you can't get away from that. Yes, even we are aging, and a figure to yours is that we already have 90 million, 110 million people who are above 60 in India. But, having said that, there are a whole bunch of 1 billion people who can be employed for this world. So the government needs to be able to think. We as industry need to think how we can give more jobs. Easy for me to say because I'm in healthcare, we need bodies. And so while we can make the bodies more intelligent, but you will still need the physical to happen. And this is so important. So we need to double down on those industries that will create and bring back something of people to give them valuable work. Because I do believe that unless people feel valued, they're going to be unhappy. It's not just giving them an income. Nobody wants subsidies. They always come back and tell us, give us work. And I think it's our responsibility. So as much as technology companies, that are coming into India and are welcomed into India, they have to come also with a commitment that they'll create an X number of jobs. So I think this is something that we should put as an underlying that, that if I wake up in this thing, but I still think that used right, we'll definitely pass your 8% with this, If we can get those billion working in jobs, this is a compound.
But that's a very big if. Minister Vaishnav, this skilling challenge, the fact that you've got the creamy layer which has the skills to be able to ride the AI wave, when you have a lot of graduates emerging from these mediocre educational institutions who are not at the very cutting edge. And this is a time when a lot of work is being done by robotics, a lot of it is automated. And therefore, India's young population, which at one level is its biggest advantage, but potentially could become a point of distress as well. To what extent do you think we're on the path to meeting that challenge, and to what extent do you think we've already missed the boat?
So the focus on skilling is huge. In case of AI, I can give the targets that we have set for ourselves. At least 1 million people should be ready with AI tools, AI skills. They should be able to create those use cases, create those applications which the world wants. And we have shown that kind of scale in multiple things. In telecom, we had 100 universities where we set up the 5G labs so that the students come out ready for the industry. In semiconductor, we have 240 universities where we have given the most advanced EDA tools so that the students can actually design the chips while they are in the third year and final year of the projects. The course curriculum is getting fully aligned with what the industry wants. So at the mid-level, at the lower level, and at the top level, each part of this value chain, we are very focused on skilling, and the results are visible. They are tangible. Today, our economy is generating about 1.5 million jobs a month, formal jobs. That's the current rate of job creation. We have heard Mr. S.N. Subramaniam saying that about 35,000 people. So that's the kind of attrition rate which is happening because the economy is moving. And in the rural areas, if you look at the real income in the rural areas, that's really rising. And that's again giving that impetus to consumption, and the growth cycle is getting created by that. Yeah.
He also spoke of working for 90 hours every week, and that Indians needed to work much harder, and that the young generation was more interested in balance than in life, than in working. So where do you come out? The minister, though, I suppose, can say for himself that how many hours do you work in a week? In the Modi government, he's required to work 24/7, so he has no time off at all.
90 hours is a light week for him.
90 hours, you think he's being coyish?
Our Prime Minister works
He's being
18 hours
coyish
a
and
day.
very nonchalant and not telling us how many hours he works.
It's okay.
You need some agents.
Agentic Vaishnavs, so he's got... So, we've got a lot of people sitting here looking at the India story, and if you have some questions, we're happy to take them now and get you to talk about what you think you're liking about what you're seeing in India, and also what you think you'd like to see more of. So, I'm going to give Deepali a chance. Can we get a mic across and then...
So it's heartening to hear, the India vision. But let me tell you, when I talk about my company, Wellspun, we are one of the largest global textile exporters in America, across the globe. We are talking about AI, but I think let's not, overlook that, after agriculture, it's textiles that deploys maximum manpower. So you are going to have different segments. You will have the blue-collar workforce and the white-collar workforce. How are we looking at, because today, to deploy people in a state like Gujarat, even the migration with UP and Bihar getting their own, deployment there, getting manpower is not getting easy. How does that interface? How do you develop that? Because today everybody wants to, India is the heart, let's face it, is the heart of a supply chain outsourcing. We are making in India for the world and making in India for India. So my biggest challenge is the deployment and the manpower, how do we get that manpower in? Because that's going to be the biggest one for efficiencies if you become the China plus one.
Who would like to take the question?
Minister Vaishnav, would you like to answer that?
I can give multiple examples. Today, our new education policy has really changed the way our education institutes, whether they are top universities, mid-level universities, or at the cutting-edge diploma, polytechnics, and ITIs, that is changing in a very big way. The fundamental focus of the new education policy is to align industry requirements with what the university teaches. I'll give an example. In the Gati Shakti Vishwavidyalaya that we have focused for transportation, Airbus wanted engineers to be fully trained and be ready for aeronautical work, design work, maintenance work, operations, a lot of work. We told them that here is a whiteboard, you design the course curriculum yourselves. They actually didn't believe initially, but once they got the course curriculum done and we didn't change a comma or a full stop, today they have decided to kind of train and of course hire for the global workforce 15,000 aeronautical engineers, which will be from the Gati Shakti Vishwavidyalaya, right? There are multiple such examples and I'll be very happy to engage with you for your specific needs. We can actually earmark a university, we can actually earmark an institution, and you decide the course curriculum. We'll make sure that the students who get ready for you so that your talent needs can be met, and I give that as an open offer to everybody in this way.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Sultan Suleiman, one of the government's big ideas is to work on the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor, the traditional trading route. Of course, after it was announced, there was a war in the Middle East which kind of pushed that back. What level of confidence do you have at this moment that the corridor, the multimodal corridor, is falling into place in the way that you'd like? And what would you like, not just the Indian government, but governments in West Asia and in Europe to do to be able to expedite that process, which can become then potentially a critical trading route?
I understand. The idea is from India to UAE by rail, and then again by rail from UAE to the Gulf and everywhere. My question, how long that will take? We did our own rail in 2004. We just finished it. So you want to tell me we're going to connect everybody? We have to work with what we have. So today, we are taking cargo from India to Bandar Abbas. From Bandar Abbas, we take it to Uzbekistan, to Warsaw, within about 10 days. So we are creating routes for Indian cargo to reach Europe. The plan is good, but it will take time. We have to find new routes. I have another comment about, if you allow me, about the employment. In Dubai, we established a Bay Free Zone. With 3.5 million people, we created 500,000 jobs and 42% GDP contribution for Dubai alone. Imagine with a country like India, that will be big. A lot of people want to move. So when I hear about projects in India building port after ports, in my opinion, port will not get you employment. Manufacturing will. Yes. And we learned something in Jabal Ali. The only time we were able to make the port work is when we produce a lot of product in it. So that experiment, or port-centric, meaning a port and industry, and we do this everywhere. In Ecuador, we have an industry. In India today, we have a new port in Gujarat, Tunatakra. We are building the port and acquiring land. We actually bought so many lands in India today. And many of these industries want to come to a kind of a free zone, because free zone gives people a confidence that the law doesn't change. Now, all these people will do nearshoring. They will create jobs, no doubt about it. And we've seen it, how it worked with us. And with us, when we build, we either build a port, a new port, near a city that doesn't have a port. But if there is a city that has a port, then I build an industrial park, because it is no sense to have more capacity. But I will re-emphasize more free zones, more industrial park, connected with the port. That's what will be ready for people. And India also, you know, there are not enough lands. But I'm happy to say, from the foreign company, we have the largest parcel that we kept buying. We've been in India since '97. And we are very bullish about India.
Is it getting easier to buy land and do business in India? Or is it as tough as it was?
There are lands available for industry, and we take them. We invested almost $2.5 billion. We invested in Tunatakra, 600 million. We're investing a few billion in the future. Why? Because we see the growth. We can feel it. India is closer to a big consumer market everywhere, from Africa to the world. So we are very bullish about the prospect. And I will emphasize industrial parks are the key.
One point I would like to agree with and second His Excellency Sultan. It has to be manufacturing and services. It cannot be manufacturing or services. Some people who try to espouse that, no, it cannot be that model of manufacturing-led growth. I would like to say that it has to be manufacturing and services combined. It cannot be either or, it has to be and. Yeah.
Okay, we have time for one final question. I'm going to give an opportunity for someone to ask. So who wants to ask the question? Okay, can we have the gentleman there ask a question, please?
So I'm Simranpreet. I run a non-profit in India. And in India's growth trajectory, we want to hear your perspectives on what role do you see social entrepreneurs playing? And like when we talk of ease of doing business, like ease of doing social work, right? How can they, from a compliances perspective, from the systems which are there, so that more and more young people can become change agents and come forward and make things better, make public school systems better, make public healthcare better, so the delivery at the last mile can be improved. So how do you see the role that we...
Rahul,
Yes.
I have one point on this. So I think that we're one of the few countries that has formalized CSR. So 2% going, and to give you the, that is, where actually companies are investing billions, and not just the 2%, they're investing more. So that goes into creating, because we think that social inequality will be the worst thing that can happen that will impede India's growth. It has to, all boats have to rise. But just to give you a point, that from this, when India was heading G20, Uday Kotak was part of one of the was one of the work streams. And he said if the world followed India's model, then there would be absolutely no, there wouldn't be any need for us to think about that most of the NGOs would get funded. We would think about disease prevention, all those NGOs, whether it's, and then climate change, all these, it would solve. So I think some of this is coming from India, the innovation that, I'm not saying nothing is ever enough, but I think that we have a strong structure for it.
So the clock tells me that we're out of time in this session on India's economic blueprint.
Please don't stop without R&D, what we do fabulously, and as part of India's economic blueprint. So thank you.
Great.
So thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for joining us here. We've had an opportunity to talk about some of the things that are falling into place and also reflect on what more needs to be done. Minister Vaishnav, Sultan Ahmed, thank you very much. Shobna Kaminini and Sanjeev Bajaj for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.